we can do that for any organisation.
Right.
And in fact, if anyone wants that, to just get in touch. And
is
more
that
than
the
happy
same
to
for
provide
international
that.
companies? Because quite a few of my clients are based in the States, and
yeah, doesn't matter where you are. And there's nothing, just like the hackers at this stage, there's nothing intrusive about it. We're not, it's not ethical hacking or anything like that. It's all information that's publicly available. All we're doing is kind of sucking up all that information and collating it and making sense of it all. And so we can then look at individual companies. We can then aggregate that by industries. And so, we could tell you. So for instance, interested both music and movies and creative industries was the other. Are roughly the same, and they're both round about 50. I think one was 48 and one was 47, something like that, which says that it's middling. Now, I know 2 years ago, because we do it every year, we're on it every year, they were more up the 60, 70. So things are happening, which is really good, really great to see. But it still says there's a long way to go.
Yeah, I feel like in my industries we're quite lax with things like that compared to some. But we obviously use a lot of IP, like copyrighted music, large files, we share files, we deal with a lot of metadata. And that's where the money is made, isn't it? Through the IP, through the music. And I feel like in my industry, and we're a lot more focused on the copyright than actually losing
but
the files.
It comes back to, it's a bit like copyright's like your insurance. You know what I mean? So copyright kind of almost deals with things after it's happened, because then you'll argue, rights. Whereas it kind of doesn't matter, because if you lose all that, all your stuff up front, it's worthless.
And that's the thing with clouds. It's made me realize how vulnerable storing things on clouds are. Because all clouds, a majority can be hacked. Right? Yeah. Even if you've got passwords and things like that, passwords can be.
So the thing about, I think there needs to be a separation between kind of cloud hosting and cloud platforms, because the two are.
So I'm talking about the cloud platforms and drives and where you store it all.
So we had, I think it was on Azure, but it might have been AWS, but it's all the same. We were recently carrying out a pen test for an organization, and as part of the application to use this organization services, you had to upload ID. So it's a copy of your passport or your driving license. And I think it took one of our guys about 2 minutes to access every record that had been uploaded.
Wow.
And again, it's not a criticism necessarily of the organisation. Hey, they were doing something proactive. They were getting testing to discover things like this, right? But what it does demonstrate is there are literally thousands of settings. So AWS, I think it's more than 2,000 settings. And you only need to muck one or two up. And as this organisation did, they'd exposed a whole pile of information, which clearly is, for a hacker, it's a dream come true.
Yeah. So I'm going to look into a couple of different case studies in my industry and get your opinion on maybe what they should have done differently to prevent, and how, if it was to happen to someone, how would they deal with that? So unreleased music, Radiohead, right? They had their music stolen. Is that right? From the cloud, and I believe that they were being blackmailed for
I think for money. $150,000. I think they were asking for.
So in the end, they had their music released. They said no to it, right? Probably said go and do one. And then their music was just released.
And I think
online.
they did a brilliant thing in that they stuck the two fingers up and said, "Oh, we're just going to release it anyway." And all the money that was generated from that, they gave to charity. Root causes are never accurately reported, so you've always got to kind of read between the lines slightly. Going back to something I mentioned earlier, it's 207 days on average. So I can guarantee you, from the attack happening to being exploited, so I can guarantee you in that case, because it's accessing large files, probably on cloud storage somewhere, because the recording studio or the distributor or whoever it was, they'll have been using platforms to support their business, probably.
Like most of our industry,
And therefore, it wouldn't have been a quick hack. Oh, look, I've just done that and I found all the radio heads. They'll have spent donkeys of time and effort trying to access that. One of your biggest protections in that kind of example is using a SOC, a Security Operations Center, who can get all the system logs of the client organization. So it's something we do. We ingest over 1 trillion logs a day, and we look for indications of compromise. So signs of something weird happening, right? And that might be lots of failed logins for a user, for instance, which is probably a sign that someone's trying to hack
right.
Or it could be some strange network traffic, big blips in network traffic, which could be indications of movement of files or other types of network manipulation. By constantly monitoring all of that, we can, metaphorically pick up the phone and say, hey, there's something weird going on there. They go, yeah, I was expecting that. Or, oh, hold on, we'll look into that further, and then either they, us, both of us will work to try and nail that. But then we can also look at, well, where else has the hacker been? What else has the hacker done? And that's really important for remediation. So it's that constant monitoring, constant picking up. But for and so we provide these services, right at the very start of saying we're trying to make everything accessible, and so we have made that accessible. But for small individuals or 1, 2, 3 man bands, it's probably not realistic, and it's possible that they're not utilizing a whole bunch of these kind of services, and then you're on to well, equally important kind of different measures. Lots of that is around password security, multi-factor authentication, and again, I think a lot of it is known and understood, but again, there's lots of misconceptions. I took a note before I came in earlier, just of some timings, because I think this will shock you.
Don't most people use date of births?
Well,
or 1, 2, 3.
They're very common.
Yeah.
We've already got a list of the top 100,000 passwords used in the UK, and of course, so does every hacker. Bear in mind, anything we do, it's a game of cat and mouse. Anything we do, they're doing. But if I was to actually try and establish that password through techniques I won't describe here, but we actively try and discover that password. If someone had a password, secret 1, 2, right, so really, really common one, that would take us about an hour to discover.
Right.
The key is not how complicated the password is. The real key is the length of password. And so the NCSC, which is the National Cybersecurity Centre, their advice is 3 random words. Just pick 3 words. And so I was sat in the office before I came down this evening, and we've got a little tool that we use that tells you kind of roughly how long it would take us to discover the password. And I just looked around the room and picked a few things. So I picked a password at random of telephone, paper, ruler. Right?
Okay.
So secret 1, 2 took 1 hour.
Yeah.
Telephone, paper, ruler, that's 16 odd characters, is it? Something like that. Have a guess how long that would take us to discover.
Well, if it was advised to come up with 3 words, maybe, I don't know, 3 hours?
300 trillion years.
No.
So that's the benefit of length. So this thing of having really complicated passwords, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numbers, there's truth in it. There's truth in it. But the reality is, the longer your password is, the longer it's going to take, and it exponentially rises. And for most of the cases, do you know what? That's all right, because most modern platforms, most modern applications, after 3 attempts, 4 attempts, 5 attempts, you're locked out anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
So if we were trying to do that in the real world, it's, for most people, most of the time, having a long password that is memorable is really important, way more important than changing it regularly. Which brings me nicely on to the second point I was going to make there, is different passwords, right? So I came up with telephone paper ruler as my 3 random words, which was just made up before I came here. But if I use telephone paper ruler for my Spotify account, my bank account, my email account, the hacker only has to get it once, and it'll probably be from a data breach from another provider. He's then got access to everything if you've used the same password. So using different passwords, critically important. Use a password manager. Again, Google has got one built in, Apple's got one built in. They're freely available. Lots of people don't use them because they see huge, long EXY123 ABC. Oh, I'll never remember that. You don't have to remember it. That's the beauty, because security shouldn't be complicated.
So another issue that we had recently as well over the past few months was a large ticketing company where you want to go and see Taylor Swift or some of these other artists, or everyone's it was at 500,000 customer details and their bank details just exposed online. That's a really common one, isn't it?
It is. It is
releasing data and extorting money, or they're going to release the data.
Yeah, the positive spin on that is that tends to be the larger organizations. Larger organizations tend to be much better at, because they've got the resources, at actually letting the ICU know, actually informing all the people affected and impacted, and therefore assuming that you have used different passwords and different usernames on different services, you're some way mitigated. One of the real risks tends to be actually not passwords, not necessarily even bank details. It's the personal details, and then identity theft off the back of that. Going back to different types of attacks, if it is focused and if it's ransomware, it tends to be larger organizations. Mistakes
so I'm hearing that hackers are targeting more small to medium sized companies now because they don't have, like we said, the infrastructure in place. But why? What do they want? What are the most common things that they want out of it?
Money, just money. And so the chances are, if you're a small business and you've been attacked, almost certainly it's not you that they're after.
What about the data?
Oh, the data itself.
If you have say thousands of client lists, contact details, apparently sometimes it just sits on a server for ages.
Which
to figure out what they're going to do.
Yes. So again, that tends to be identity theft. That's a large part of that, because going back to this no separation, because typically it's a smaller business. It's not uncommon that you've got a spreadsheet with a whole pile of information on it. It's not uncommon that you've got a basic database with that kind of information. And equally, you're unlikely to have those kind of layers of security in front either. The value of your data as a small business is relatively low to the hacker. Because to a hacker, if it's 2,000 contacts, it's all right. It's not huge. But hey, if he can get £1,000 for it, that's £1,000. And it's back to this: that they're small. The hackers themselves are small businesses who are out to make money, and they know if they go to the small business, maybe the company only turns over £100,000 a year, and if they go and ask for £250,000, clearly it's not going to happen. If they go and ask for £1,000, there's a fair chance that they'll pay the £1,000 and then they've got the money. Of course, my advice would be never, ever, ever, ever pay. And that's also the NCSE's advice, which is an offshoot of the UK government. And I say that for a number of reasons. And it's interesting because other people in the industry have different views. It can be quite a divisive subject, but my view is never pay it. Primarily because they've probably left the back door anyway. Also, you don't know if you're going to get that data back. So you pay £1,000 and they go, actually, no, 2,000. I know you've got money now, £2,000, please. And then how long does that go on? And then if they've left the back door, they won't do anything for a year or so. They'll come back. They'll come back. Have another bite of the cherry. And so just don't pay it. Just don't pay it. Best advice is, depending on the type of data that's taken, you know, by law you have to inform the ICO, depending on the type of data.
In the UK.
In the UK, sorry, in the UK. But equally, you know, across Europe, there's various GDPR obligations on you as well. But the best thing to do, stick your hands up and say, this has happened, and here's what you're going to do about it. And always, always, always get in touch with a specialist organisation for advice. And any organisation worth their salt, you know, obviously I'm going to say Foxtech, but you know, there's lots of others out there. We all love talking about it. Pick up the phone. No one's going to charge you to have a chin wag on what's happened, what the best next steps are. And because everyone I know that works in the industry just wants it to get better. So, you know, do just pick up the phone.
And what advice would you give if, say, you know, a company has had all their contact lists, all their music files, everything taken from them?
Yeah.
What would you advise? And what if, you know, if they hadn't backed up their work either, and then lost everything?
Backup is a critical part of it as well.
Or destroyed.
We'll probably touch on that later.
Yeah.
So it's the first step, get advice. Second step is, it's a criminal act. If it has any kind of value to you or your client, contact the police. If you've got insurance, contact your insurer. It's back to this being proactive. By the time you're contacting us, it's probably already too late. You know, I had a customer who, very similar position, had lost lots and lots of information. She was both an author and a performing actress. She'd scripts that she'd lost, she'd manuscripts that she'd lost, a whole lot, and there's nothing we could do. Absolutely nothing we could do.
And what was the reason for that? Why?
Because there was no backup. So the hacker had taken all the data. Because he wanted to go down the ransomware route, or she. And our advice, of course, was not to pay. But the, you know, the real tragedy in it, you know, she'd, you know, probably years worth of work. It's all gone. And she was, you know, a couple of months away from publishing. And had to start again.
That's painful.
And so backup is really, really important. And there, you know, there's lots of different backup products out there, lots of different solutions. But the main thing is that you know, back everything up, and you know, generally the rule is to have 3 different backups: 1 on cloud, 1 off-site, 1 locally. And the important thing about having your backup separate is, if the hacker has done something in your system and then you back that up, well, you've backed up whatever it is he's done. So you go, I've lost everything. That's okay, I'll restore it. And then goes all the bad stuff that he's done before, you've just restored it all back. And so he just waits till the next day and then goes in, does it again. So having kind of separate backups for smaller businesses, it tends to mostly be files rather than kind of system configurations and stuff. Backup.